Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 17. You ready? Those Fantasy Goodfellas.
Rolling on the field.
Those Fantasy Goodfellas. All right, before we get started on this week's rankings, let's take a look at last week's rankings and see how they worked out. All right. We had a little technical glitch there. So we just had a little technical glitch. It always happens when we have these type of issues. So if you look here, Chris Olave was the only one who didn't play. And if we want to look at the rest of the players, this is how it all worked out. So you had Justin Jefferson. So a couple notables. You had Stefon Diggs, Devontae Adams, and Jamar Chase did not make the top 30 rankings, which is wild because in week 16 you expect a lot more things to happen, but that's the way it looks like for here. So let's get let me just explain what you should expect in our video this week. This is a live video, so we're looking for people to interact, write some comments down. And what we're trying to do is see if we can help you set your own lineups for week 17. Now, if you made it this far, you know that you're probably in your finals, you're in the championship, you're in your Super Bowl. So we hope that some of these rankings and what we go through will help. All right, so let's kind of get started for the last week of our rankings. We won't do this again. So. Good luck in your championships, and don't forget you can always like and subscribe and put some comments in the chat, and that's it. Let's get started. For week number 1, Justin Jefferson is at Green Bay. Justin Jefferson, we have our first comment. All right, thanks. Justin Jefferson came in, he was ranked, he came in with 12 out of 16 receptions, had 133 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. So he had an excellent week, and if you had Justin Jefferson, he probably helped you propel you to the next week. At number 2, Tyreek Hill is at New England. Now, Tua Tagovailoa did not have a good week. He had 3 interceptions, and now he's in the concussion protocol. So we don't know what to expect from Tua. And if you look at Jalen Waddle, had a better week than Tyreek Hill. So if you're looking at Tyreek Hill to do well, so far sometimes it could be Jalen Waddle. So to see Tyreek Hill with possibly Tua out seems a little stretch. At number 3, we have Jamar Chase versus Buffalo. All right, thanks everybody for chatting. We love it. Thanks. Number 3, Jamar Chase is home versus Buffalo. Now, Burrow's playing exceptionally well. It didn't seem to go Jamar Chase's way. He had 79 rushing yards. He was ranked 42. But let's just see, the top receiver was T. Higgins. He had 128 yards, 1 reception. He was ranked 6th. And if you just want to peek at what Joe Burrow did, he's playing really well. He came in ranked 3rd for quarterbacks, so that's really good. Now, if you're expecting Jamar Chase to do well, that's going to be, it's debatable. But I like Jamar Chase's chance versus Buffalo. It's a very important game, so we're going to ride with Jamar Chase. At number 4, Devontae Adams is home versus San Francisco. Now, this seems to be a little stretch just because he's not playing well. Derek Carr isn't playing well. He had 174 passing yards, 1 TD. That's not going to get the job done. If you look here, Hunter Renfrow was the best receiver. And look at all the comments. I love you guys. Thank you. Hunter Renfrow was the best receiver, and it was not Davante Adams. Now, if you listen to our videos, you'll know that Richard always says give the ball to Davante Adams. So let's just look overall. He's kind of trending down. That whole team's down. I'm not sure that they even start Derek Carr. So I think this is a little stretch to put Davante Adams so high. I know it's a big game, but I don't think Las Vegas has anything to play for. At number 5, Stefon Diggs at Cincinnati. Now, here's a receiver that, is probably the best receiver on their team, but he's not always scoring touchdowns. If you look at his touchdowns overall, you'll see that for the last 3 weeks, he hasn't scored, and he's only had a multiple touchdown game once this whole season. If you look at yards, he's kind of, I would say he's averaging about 90-something yards, and it's not getting the job done. So, unfortunately, I think Stefon Diggs, it's an important game, so maybe they're going to throw it to him. But if they eliminate Diggs, who else do they got? They got Gabe Davis, and they also got the other receiver, McKenzie, I think. So, I think that's a stretch for Stefon Diggs to be 5th. Number 6, A.J. Brown versus New Orleans. A.J. Brown's been doing really well, even with a backup quarterback. Gardner Minshew, he had 355 passing yards, 2 passing TDs, and so it seems like that offense can move the ball even without having Jalen Hurts, but you'd like to see that. So if you look at overall here, you look at how that offense did as a whole, A.J. Brown had 103 yards. Devontae Smith had 113, but he took both those touchdowns. So maybe Gardner Minshew likes Devontae Smith. We don't have a lot of stats on that, so maybe it just goes that way. So, but I still like A.J. Brown here. They're playing New Orleans, not a tough defense, I would say. At number 7, CeeDee Lamb at Tennessee. CeeDee Lamb had probably his best game all season. So if we look at his week rankings, you'll see that Devontae Smith was no higher than ranked 2 in week 10. So he had his best season last week. It seems like that offense is playing well. I like their chances. They got T.Y. Hilton that's kind of stretching the ball a little bit, so it should open up a little bit more for CeeDee Lamb. And it seems like he's getting warm, getting hot near the tail end of the season. At number 8, Amon-Ra St. Brown, home versus Chicago. I liked Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think some people asked me, should we go with Goff? I like Goff chances. Goff was ranked 2. If you look at the best receiver, DJ Chark was how many people started him that week. But if you look like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's still getting some usage with 13 targets going his way. Had 76 yards. Just barely made the top 30. Still like his chances this week. At number 9, T. Higgins, home versus Buffalo. Now, I think T. Higgins has been a little inconsistent all season. So if you look at his inconsistency, you'll see that some weeks he gets injured, he doesn't play well. If you look at his TDs, he'll get a TD, but I think if you look at his TDs compared, so if you got 7 TDs for Higgins, and if you look for Jamar Chase and his TD totals for the entire season, you'll see that he has a few more TDs. It's always a stretch, but if I had to go with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase versus Buffalo, I think I'm going to put my money on Jamar Chase. I still think that having 2 wide receivers in the top 10 from one team is always a stretch. I don't know if I like that. So I'd put T. Higgins a little lower here. I wouldn't expect that much from him. At number 10, you got Jalen Waddle at New England. Now this is an important game. The question now comes to is who's going to be the quarterback. So if you look at the quarterback, that was a lot of production. Unfortunately, they didn't win that game last week. But the big question's been Mike Gesicki. But Jalen Waddle has probably his best game, his best season since he's been in the league. I like Jalen Waddle. Now, if you go back here, if you have Miami receivers in the top 10 or Cincinnati's receivers in the top 10, and we're talking about tandems, I don't think Miami is going to have both their receivers in the top 10. So if I was going to choose it, I would go with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to be the 2 wide receivers in that top 10. At number 11, DK Metcalf versus the New York Jets. Now, there's a little quarterback controversy, and we know that Geno Smith has been playing really, really well all season. He just needs to increase those touchdowns. But unfortunately, I would expect a little bit more for DK Metcalf all season. If you look at his production, it just seems like DK Metcalf really hasn't had those explosive plays every game. It's just lacking. And if you look at DK Metcalf, he was ranked 26. I think he's going to be in the 20s next week as well. So I think this is a little high for Metcalf, but if you're still playing, you got to ride with your best receivers, and he's one of them. At number 12, DeAndre Hopkins at Atlanta. Now, their quarterback situation doesn't look that good. So McLaurin, 217 passing yards. And if we look at the top receiver was Dortch and Marquez Brown. So I think it was a little stretch to see DeAndre Hopkins get in there as well. So that's kind of a little surprising when you have DeAndre Hopkins did not have a good game last week, but now you're going to put him top 12. I think that's a little high. I think that's a stretch. At number 13, Mike Williams versus the Los Angeles Rams. You know, the thing I like about the Chargers is Herbert is warming up. He started one game hot, kind of been injured in and out, but he seems to be warming up. And Mike Williams is back. He's got really all his receivers back. So it really all hinges on Justin Herbert. But all season, Herbert hasn't been getting the touchdowns. And if you look, that's really what's going to be holding him back. You expect more from Justin Herbert. They just did make the playoffs, and that's important because that's going to have a little confidence going in there. And if you look at the better receiver last week was Keenan Allen, and if you're putting Mike Williams ahead, that's a little stretch. I still like Keenan Allen ahead of Mike Williams, but it can go either way. At number 14, Chris Godwin, home versus Carolina. Godwin had 63 receiving yards, but the usage, the targets is going his way. He had 10 targets, he caught 8 passes, 63 yards, and I've been saying that I think there's something going on with Mike Evans and Tom Brady, so I like Godwin. But the receiver that you should really be paying attention to is Russell Gage. Gage is really, if his ankle isn't injured, then I like Gage really over Godwin and Mike Evans. But now at number 15, you see Devontae Smith, home versus New Orleans. Devontae Smith, he had 2 receiving touchdowns, 113 yards. I like his chances, and that's with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Could happen again next week. So I just think that offense is playing really well. I think that that's a pretty good ranking. I'd stick with that. At number 16, you got Terry McLaurin, home versus Cleveland. Now, the question goes here is what's Washington really playing for? And I think you get far in the season and you got McLaurin, he's a top receiver. What are you going to do with him? You got Tyler Heineke. He had 166 passing yards, 2 passing TDs. And if you look at this offense overall, you got your receivers catching the touchdowns. And, you know, I think what are you playing for? They can easily sit them the second half. You're not really playing for too much. I think that's a little stretch to put McLaurin this high because they're not really playing for anything. At number 17, Keenan Allen, home versus the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Keenan Allen looked incredible. I like his energy. He almost tiptoed into that for that touchdown. That was that could have really boosted his ranking last week. I just think that if there's the relationship and the connections with Allen and Herbert, So I would expect Keenan Allen to be a little higher on this list. At number 18, Mike Evans, home versus Carolina. Now here's what you got: Godwin at 14, Mike Edwins at 18, and he's not been playing well. Now the question goes to, is Carolina's not a good team, and Tampa actually has a chance to make the playoffs. So right now I would have to ride with Mike Evans. I think what's he averaging? Probably about 60 yards a game, and his TDs, he's just not scoring. And these rankings all depend on touchdowns. That's what's going to put you up. That's going to move you up higher on these lists. And if you see, that's really what makes the difference. But last week he was ranked 58, 29 receiving yards. But this is an important game. So I like Mike Evans here. The question is, where's Russell Gage on this list? All right. Let's just take a real quick. If you're paying attention, we had a couple comments from some people, so thanks for watching. You can always like and subscribe. Put your comments in the chat. We'll try to answer them, show you some players, but we just want to say that this might be our last wide receiver video for the entire season. So we just want to thank you for always supporting us. We want to thank Richard for doing most of the rankings all season, and it's been a fun ride. I hope that our stat machine has been able to give you some insights on who you should play this week. So let's continue with the list, and thanks. All right, at number 19, we have Garrett Wilson at Seattle. Now, let's see. Garrett Wilson, he had Zach Wilson last week. The question, and you got Mike White coming back, and I think that's going to make a big difference. I like Mike White. I think he's been doing really well. I don't think they're going to do Strevler. They've already said that they're going to go back to Mike White. It's going to start, so I think Garrett Wilson could do pretty well. He's actually had a good season. At number 20, you got Christian Kirk at Houston. Now, Christian Kirk, he didn't have a good week, but I like Trevor Lawrence's play lately. It seems like he's taken that leap this year. They're doing really well. They didn't have to pass that much, but they're showing that they can kind of play well. They got a lot of desire. They're really trying to push hard here. So the question is are you going to ride with Christian Kirk? If you look at Christian Kirk, last week this is what it looks like. He didn't get in the end zone for the last 5 weeks. So Christian Kirk is actually, Trevor Lawrence has actually been going to another Zay Jones a little bit more. So I don't know. It's a bit toss-up between Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. I think I'd have to go with Zay Jones over Christian Kirk. At number 21, Jerry Jeudy at Kansas City. Now, here's a receiver that expected big things. He can do well. Just we don't know he wasn't reliable. If you look here, yeah, he can get 70 yards, but he can have some breakout games. Look at the TDs. Week 14, he had 3 TDs. You look, week 16, he had a bunch of yards. And, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. In my league, I got Juju Smith-Schuster, and I got Jerry Jeudy that I swap always back and forth. And it's a toss-up. It's hard to pick and predict, but they're going against Kansas City. I think it's important to ride with that. So let's keep Brandon Ayuk. At number 22, Brandon Ayuk at Las Vegas. Brandon Ayuk was ranked 27th last week, 81 receiving yards. He's got Purdy's been locking it down, and I think he can do it well. I like Brandon Ayuk's chances. At number 23, Gabe Davis at Cincinnati. I think Gabe Davis, it's an important game going against Cincinnati. I think, Josh Allen is probably the best. I like Allen over. I like Allen, definitely. But Gabe Davis, he can score. He can get in the end zone. So he's doing them. At number 24, you got Amari Cooper at Washington. The question is putting Amari Cooper, and depending on him, you're going to have to ride with him, but it's late in the season, and what's Cleveland playing for? That's always my question. Eventually, they're going to have to, there's no need to play your receivers in there, but I think Amari Cooper is going to have a good game just because they have to see what they got with Watson. At number 25, DJ Moore at Tampa Bay. Carolina, what's Carolina playing for? Yes, they got a touchdown, 83 yards. I think now you're going to start seeing people playing because they got those bonuses. They got to hit those thresholds. So DJ Moore, I think he's going to do all right. I like his chances this week as well. I think that's a good ranking. At 26, you got Juju Smith-Schuster, home versus Denver. And I don't expect much from him. I think the ball is going to go obviously to the tight end. They're going to run the ball. You look last week, that's what it looks like as well. So I don't expect much from Juju Smith-Schuster. At number 27, you got Michael Pittman Jr. at the New York Giants. Now, the question goes, he didn't do good last week. They got a terrible quarterback situation going on there. Nick Foles is terrible. Matt Ryan's terrible. So I think that's a stretch to put Pittman at 27. At 28, you got Allen Lazard versus Minnesota. Now, I think this is a low ranking just because they're going to depend on Lazard to get into the playoffs. Green Bay is still fighting for that playoff spot. I think right now they're in. So I'm riding with receivers that still are playing for something. And I think that's what's important here. Now, at number 29, you got Zay Jones at Houston. I don't know about you, but I like Zay Jones this week better than Christian Kirk. I like Jacksonville. I think Trevor Lawrence has really just got a lot to play for. He's going to do well. Houston's terrible. I like to see Zay Jones a little higher. And at number 30, you got Drake London, home versus Arizona. Now, the quarterbacks, if you're like me, I use these stats sometimes to see what's going on. But if you look at the quarterback situation, you had Ritter. He had 218 yards. He got 4 rushes for 8 yards. But look, you got London. And I guess this week, you're kind of seeing what you're doing for next year. You're seeing who your players are. So I think London could do well again. I just think Arizona is in shambles right now. I don't like what they got going on in Arizona, so I think London can have a decent game as well. And that is going to be the top 30 wide receiver rankings for Week 17. I didn't see anybody put anything in the comments, but thanks for watching. And if you're still watching, that means you're in the finals, so good luck. Hope you win. Those fantasy good fellas.
Rolling on the field.
Those fantasy good fellas.